Hello and welcome to the Sana Psychological Podcast, your safe space for connection, healing, and growth. Each episode, our experienced clinicians and special guests will share strategies, stories, and resources to support your unique path to well-being. Because at Sana, your mental health matters. Hi everyone, I'm Paige Abbott. Welcome to the very first episode of the Sana Psychological Podcast. Let me start with this. If you're waiting to feel fearless before you start something or take on something new, you're going to be waiting forever. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is movement with fear. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Doing things scared. Not pretending you're confident, not forcing toxic positivity, but showing up. Your heart may be racing, your palms may be sweaty, your mind may be loud, and doing it anyway. I think there's a lie built into our relationship with fear. And that lie is that somewhere along the way, many of us learned that fear is to be interpreted as a stop sign. Don't go, don't do it. And that's certainly true of some things. So if you're walking through the forest and there's a predator there, maybe that fear response is something that we need to listen to, and we don't go, we stop. That's true on a very base physiological safety level. However, fear shows up in a lot of other areas than just when our physical life is at threat. It shows up every day when we're thinking about new goals, when we're considering change. And in that context, a lot of us have started to interpret, or I would argue misinterpret, that if we're feeling scared, that somehow that must mean we're not ready, or that's not the goal for us. We're not meant to move in that direction. But I want you to consider, what if fear isn't actually a warning? What if in those contexts we start to view it as an invitation? Fear often does show up right before big moments and small moments of growth, before visibility, before honesty, before becoming someone new. I can reflect back on one of the bigger changes in my life was moving into my own practice as a therapist. So stepping out of working at an agency where there's safety, there's predictability, maybe sometimes the illusion of safety in the sense of job security and all of that. But nevertheless, that's how I felt. I felt that considering stepping into something that was my own would be a huge risk. And that's realistic. There's parts of it that definitely were risky. However, I also knew that there would never be a point that I would feel 100% comfortable and 100% okay to take that step, that I just needed to actually do it. And fortunately, unfortunately, in my personal circumstance, I did feel pushed off the edge of the cliff, so to speak. I felt that it reached a point where I actually didn't feel like I had much choice. But of course, we always do have choice, right? I could have stayed and I could have kept that security and that stability. But in so many ways, it was no longer feeling secure or safe anyway. So I thought, okay, well, I can stay in this version of insecurity and not feeling safe, or I can step in through the fear and see what's on the other side. And man, am I glad that I did. That's what people will often notice with those big moments of change, and I'm sure you've had them in your life as well. I would encourage you to consider what have been some of the biggest changes in your life, and did you do them confident, comfortable, open? Or did you do them scared? I think most of the things that challenge us to grow at the biggest level, there is an element of fear there. even as I sit here recording this first episode of our podcast, I'm doing it scared. And I didn't come in feeling fully confident, don't feel like I have my podcast feet underneath me. But how could I? We're beginning here. We're growing something and we're going to see where it goes. And I can even feel as we're recording this and as we're moving forward, that fear is shifting and it's lessening. And that's what people will notice when they're taking on something new. You'll go into it scared. You might even go into it petrified, terrified. That fear level is through the roof. But as you move through it, that's where the fear level starts to subside. And why does that happen? We get more information. We're now in this new process and it's slowly starting to become our new reality. And when something's becoming even a little bit more familiar, that also is what helps that fear to lessen. And that's why we're very rarely, I would even say never, going to be able to jump into something new without some element of fear because it's unknown. There's always an element of some fear or some worry when we're stepping into something that we've never experienced before. And that warning signal does not mean it's a bad thing. That's the invitational piece. That's the part that's saying, this is different, but can that be okay? And so learning to do things scared really is a mindset shift. It's encouraging ourselves to act with fear as our companion, to be there with us, to, in a sense, even support us and also guide us. If fear is there, we know it's a bigger challenge. We know that it is a challenge. But we also can suspect that it's going to offer us something, and potentially something quite profound on the other side. If you're a journaler, if you're a reflector, I'm sure fear has come up in your writing, and a prompt that you could explore is your relationship with fear. What are the things that have been the biggest changes in your life before, and how did you navigate that fear while doing them? I'm sure if you tune into this and start to look at that for yourself, that you'll see you have much more wisdom, power, and grace inside of yourself to be able to navigate future or even present moments of fear differently than you're giving yourself credit for. You can be scared and very capable at the same time. What are a few practical tips for how to do things while scared? Let's move this from the theoretical, from the stories, from the experiences to the practical for a minute. One of my top tips is just try and shrink the moment. So rather than thinking about the whole future ahead of you and what's going to happen with this change that you take on, just try and bring it back to right here, right now. Can you take that next step of action? Can you do that next thing in the next minute, in the next few moments? Send that email, press publish, record that podcast episode, whatever that looks like for you. Can you start to just bit by bit take that step? It was only a few days ago that I finally opened up that podcast software account and started to slowly get into something that I've been thinking about, planning for, and looking at for a long time. But once I got to that step of action, I was frozen. I felt halted. There was fear, which then showed up as avoidance, procrastination. Oh, I'll do it another time. I'll do it later. I'm too busy. But really, I wasn't, and I knew that. I knew I was lying to myself, and so I thought, well, I'm going to use the principles that I preach to other people. Make it small, make it now, just do the next little bit. And that's where that sustainable change happens. So tip number one, deal with the now and shrink the action, shrink the moment. Just take that next small step. Tip number 2 to consider: name the fear, acknowledge it, accept that it's there. We know that there's a lot of power in putting words and vocabulary to our emotional and energetic experience. When we can identify and say to ourselves, okay, I'm scared, I'm worried, I'm going to be jumping off the edge of something here, I don't know where it's going to take me, and that's terrifying to me. That has power, and that also has freedom. Instead of saying to ourselves, I shouldn't feel this way, or I don't know how I feel, I don't want to feel this way, let's just ignore it, avoid it, make it go away, escape from it, try sitting into it, breathing into it. Okay, I'm scared, and I'm doing this anyway. I can take that next step. I can do that next thing. I can create that login. I can sign into an account. I can play around with recording. I can sit and do that first episode, and I can do it. Because as I stop wrestling with the fear, it starts to lose its power. And just remember, you don't need the fear to completely disappear as you start to take action towards your goals and change. You just need it to sort of ride quietly beside you in the passenger seat, the back seat. It's present. It has a presence there, but it doesn't need to overcome and overtake. Third tip would be to focus on action and process rather than the outcome. Fear gets bigger and bigger the farther ahead that we look. If you start to think about the next 10 years of your life, do you start to feel some chest congestion? Can you notice yourself starting to breathe a little bit heavier? I'm certainly noticing I'm not even able to think about the next 10 years, but I can feel that physiological response of some worry, some panic, some fear, because I don't know at the end of the day what the next 10 years of my life is going to have. Maybe instead I can pull it back to just the immediate process ahead. So whether that's a career change, a personal goal, a podcast goal, whatever the goal is for yourself, I'll still keep that general goal and intention out there, but I don't need to think too much about what's going to happen with this podcast? What's going to be episode number 2? What's going to be episode number 100? Am I going to get there? How long is that going to take? That all starts to increase that fear, that anxiety. Instead, I can just bring myself back to right here, right now. I'm having this conversation with you and I'm enjoying it. I like talking about fear. I like talking about the psychology and the mental health of learning to navigate our emotions differently. And that's what we're sitting here doing. Let's focus on the process. Let's focus on what we can do and what is that next step of action that we can take. Those would be my top tips for just starting to build a different relationship with fear and starting to move towards greater action. We can reframe fear again as a signal, as an invitation. The next time that fear shows up, ask yourself, what might this fear be pointing me toward? Where is the hope? Where is the direction that you want to go? Because often the thing that scares you will be the thing that expands you. If you're scared right now about starting, about speaking up, about choosing yourself, let this be the reminder that you don't need to wait until you're fearless. Do it scared, do it imperfectly, do it honestly. And one day you'll look back and realize that fear wasn't the end of the story, that it was just the beginning. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm excited. I'm still feeling scared as we sit at the end of our first episode, but I'm so grateful to have you here, and I look forward to future discussions and topics to come. Thank you for listening to the Sana Psychological Podcast. We're glad you joined us today. For more resources, free tools, or to book a session with our team, visit sanapsychological.com. Your mental health is our priority. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and take good care.